In 1963, a woman in Clarksdale, Mississippi, ran a house store out of her kitchen where she sold snacks to neighborhood children for a nickel apiece. She had a cigar box full of pennies and a screen door that never fully closed. She sold molasses candy wrapped in wax paper, crackling bread cut into squares, and pickles soaked in cherry Kool-Aid that turned your fingers red for the rest of the afternoon. She did not have a business license. She did not have a menu. She had a kitchen and a knowledge of what tasted right. That kitchen is number 1 on this list. Number 18 disappeared because the woman who fried them every Saturday morning passed in 1987, and her granddaughter could never get the edges crispy enough. Number 13 sounds wrong until you taste it, and then you understand exactly why your grandmother kept a bottle of vinegar next to the sugar bowl. Now, this is not a cooking show, and I am not a doctor or a dietitian. This is not medical advice. This is just a walk through the snacks that used to appear on porches, in church halls, and on the counters of kitchens that smelled like something you will never forget. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down 25 soul food snacks from the 1960s that have completely disappeared. Number 25, crackling bread. This was the snack that told you a hog had been killed recently and nothing was going to waste. A woman in Utah, Alabama, made hers by stirring bits of fried pork skin and rendered fat directly into her cornmeal batter. She added a pinch of salt, a splash of buttermilk, and poured it all into a cast iron skillet that had not been washed with soap since 1941. The Cracklings gave the bread a salty crunch that regular cornbread could not touch. In the 1960s, a slab of crackling bread cost nothing extra because the cracklings came from the same hog that gave you your chops, your lard, and your fat back. It was arithmetic. Every part of that animal had a purpose, and wasting any of it was something your grandmother would not allow. By the 1990s, most families had stopped butchering their own hogs. The cracklings you could buy in a bag at the gas station were not the same. The bread disappeared with the butchering. Number 24, molasses pulled candy. Before there were corner stores stocked with penny candy, there was this. A woman in Macon, Georgia, made it on her back porch in 1964 using blackstrap molasses, a cup of sugar, a tablespoon of butter, and a splash of vinegar. She boiled it to the hard cracked stage, poured it on a greased plate, and when it was cool enough to touch, she buttered her hands and pulled it. She pulled it like rope, stretching and folding it until it turned from dark brown to a golden amber. Then she snapped it into pieces and laid them on wax paper. Molasses was cheap because it was a byproduct of the sugar refining process, and for generations, it was one of the few sweeteners Black families in the rural South could afford. The pulling was the part that required the skill. You had to know the exact moment when the candy was cool enough to handle, but warm enough to stretch. That moment lasted about 90 seconds. Your grandmother did not set a timer, she just knew. Number 23, cornbread and buttermilk. This was not a recipe, this was a ritual. You crumbled day-old cornbread into a tall glass, poured cold buttermilk over it, and ate it with a spoon. Some families added a sprinkle of sugar, others added nothing at all. A man in Tupelo, Mississippi, ate this every single night before bed for 43 years. His wife made the cornbread fresh every other day, and the buttermilk came from a local dairy that sold it for 20 cents a quart in 1965. Food historian Adrian Miller has noted that thick, cultured buttermilk was once the foundation of this dish, but the thin, commercial buttermilk that replaced it could never deliver the same tangy richness. For some, the mention of cornbread and buttermilk sparks deep memory. For others, it sparks pure confusion. That gap between recognition and bewilderment is the distance between one generation and the next. Your grandfather called it supper. Your grandchildren have never heard of it. Number 22, boiled peanuts. Back in those days, if you drove through rural Georgia, Alabama, or South Carolina in late summer, you would see hand-painted signs on the side of the road that said nothing but two words: boiled peanuts. A woman in Americus, Georgia, made hers in a dented stock pot on a propane burner set up in her front yard. She used green peanuts straight from the field, still caked in red Georgia clay, and boiled them in salt water for 4 hours until the shells turned soft and the peanuts inside were tender like a cooked bean. A brown paper sack of them cost $0.25 in 1966. The practice of boiling peanuts has roots that stretch back to West African cooking traditions, where legumes were boiled and seasoned as a common preparation. By the time the peanut became a major Southern crop after the Civil War, Black families had already been boiling them for generations. That roadside sack was not a snack, it was a history lesson you could hold in your hand. Number 21, tea cakes. Do not confuse these with cookies. A tea cake was something different entirely. It was softer than a sugar cookie, thicker than a biscuit, and barely sweet enough to qualify as a dessert. A woman in Selma, Alabama, rolled her dough on a floured board with a rolling pin that had belonged to her mother, cut rounds with the rim of a drinking glass, and baked them until the bottoms were just barely golden. Her recipe was flour, butter, sugar, eggs, buttermilk, vanilla, and a scrape of nutmeg. That was it. Tea cakes carry a history that reaches back more than 200 years. Plantation cooks created them as a specialty for the enslavers who hosted afternoon gatherings, and those cooks would hide extras to slip to their own families at personal risk. During the Great Migration, the tradition traveled north in suitcases in memory. Almost every family with Southern roots had someone who made the best tea cakes. That tradition is now in danger of disappearing because the women who carried it are gone, and the recipe was rarely written down. Number 20, fried hand pies. These were half-moon pastries filled with whatever fruit was in season, sealed with a fork, and fried in a skillet of hot oil until the crust blistered golden. A woman in Natchez, Mississippi, made hers with dried peaches she had put up the summer before. She soaked the peaches overnight, cooked them down with sugar and cinnamon, and spooned the filling onto circles of dough she rolled thin as a dime. In her kitchen in 1961, those pies cost nothing but time and a cup of lard. Some women used apples, others used blackberries or sweet potato filling. The pies were portable, which made them perfect for field workers, church picnics, and children who needed something to hold them between meals. You could wrap one in a napkin and carry it in your pocket. That was the whole point. By the time frozen turnovers showed up in grocery stores in the 1970s, the handmade version started to vanish. The convenience was cheaper, but it was not the same. Number 19, sorghum taffy. Before maple syrup found its way into grocery stores, and long before corn syrup flooded the American table, there was sorghum. This dark, rich, slightly bitter syrup was once a staple sweetener in rural Black households across the South. Sorghum came from tall, grassy stalks that were grown, harvested, and milled by hand, then boiled down into a thick liquid that carried hints of earth and smoke. A woman in Tuskegee, Alabama, made taffy from sorghum, syrup, sugar, and butter every fall after the sorghum press finished its season. She boiled the mixture, poured it onto a buttered slab, and pulled it the way her mother had taught her to pull it and the way her grandmother had taught her mother before that. Have you ever thought about what it means when a sweetener disappears from a kitchen? Here is what nobody tells you about soul food snacks from this era. They were not just recipes, they were economic systems. Sorghum could be grown in poor soil where sugarcane would not survive. It could be processed without expensive equipment. A family could grow it, press it, and bottle it without spending a single dollar. That self-sufficiency was the entire point. When Cheap corn syrup arrived in the 1960s, and grocery stores started stocking it for pennies. The sorghum press went quiet. The taffy went with it. You lost a snack, but you also lost the independence that came with making your own sweetener from your own land. That is a cost no grocery store receipt can show you. Number 18, hoe cakes with cane syrup. This was the Saturday morning snack that disappeared when Ida Mae Simmons of Greenwood, Mississippi, passed in 1987. She made her hoe cakes on a cast iron griddle that sat directly on the stove eye. Her batter was nothing but white cornmeal, a pinch of salt, and enough water to make it pour. She dropped it by the spoonful and fried each cake until the edges turned brown and lacy. Then she stacked them on a plate, drizzled cane syrup over the top, and set them on the table without a single word. The name hoe cake comes from the old practice of cooking cornmeal batter on the flat blade of a garden hoe held over an open fire. Enslaved field workers made them this way because it was the only cooking surface they had during the workday. By the 1960s, the hoe was gone, but the name remained, and so did the simplicity. 3 ingredients, no measuring. Her granddaughter tried to make them in 2004 and could not get the edges right. She said the batter looked the same, but the griddle did not sound the same when the batter hit it. That sound was the recipe. Number 17, pickled pig's feet. You either know exactly what these are, or you have never seen one in your life. There is no middle ground. A woman in Mobile, Alabama, kept a gallon jar of pickled pig's feet on the counter of her kitchen from 1958 until the day she moved to a nursing home in 1991. The feet were clean, boiled until tender, then packed into jars with vinegar, salt, red pepper flakes, bay leaves, and sliced onion. They sat in that brine for weeks, and the longer they sat, the better they got. In the 1960s, you could buy fresh pig's feet at any butcher counter in the South for less than 15 cents a pound. They were one of the cheapest cuts available because most people did not want them. Black families turned that rejection into a delicacy. You ate them cold, straight from the jar, standing at the kitchen counter with a paper towel in your hand. That was enough. Number 16, peanut patties. These were flat, round discs of pink candy studded with roasted peanuts. And in the 1960s, you could find them in every gas station, general store, and candy counter across the Black South. A woman in Tyler, Texas, made hers from scratch using sugar, corn syrup, peanuts, butter, and a few drops of red food coloring that turned the whole batch the color of a sunset. She poured the hot candy onto wax paper in circles the size of her palm and let them harden in the evening air. Tyler Candy Company began producing peanut patties commercially around this same time and has been operating in the same facility for more than 70 years. But the homemade version, the one your aunt made on the stove and wrapped in cellophane for church fundraisers, that version is the one that is gone. The store-bought patties survive, the kitchen version does not. Number 15, persimmon pudding. If you have never eaten a ripe persimmon, you do not know what you are missing. And if you have eaten an unripe one, you know exactly why most people stop trying. A woman in rural Tennessee made her persimmon pudding by collecting wild persimmons from a tree behind her house every November after the first frost. She mashed them through a colander to remove the seeds and skin, mixed the pulp with flour, sugar, eggs, buttermilk, and a pour of melted butter, then baked it in a dish until it set like a dense, spiced custard. This was a seasonal snack that existed for about 4 weeks each year, between the first frost and the first hard freeze. You could not rush it. You could not store the fruit. You had to wait for the tree to decide it was time. That patience was built into the recipe. When families moved from the country to the city, the persimmon trees stayed behind. Number 14, fried sweet potato pone. This was sweet potato sliced thick, dredged in a little flour and sugar, and fried in a skillet until the outside caramelized and the inside turned soft as custard. A woman in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, made these as an after-school snack in 1965 for her 4 children and whatever neighbor kids happened to be on the porch. Sweet potatoes cost almost nothing. A 10-pound bag at the market ran about 40 cents. She peeled them, sliced them crosswise into rounds about half an inch thick, and fried them in lard that she kept in a coffee can beside the stove. Sweet potatoes hold a deep significance in Black American food history. When enslaved Africans could no longer access the yams they had known in West Africa, the sweet potato became the closest substitute, and they grew them in the small plots their enslavers allotted them. That fried pone was not just a snack, it was an adaptation that crossed an ocean. Number 13, vinegar pie. This sounds wrong. It is not. A woman in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, made a pie from nothing but eggs, sugar, butter, flour, and 2 tablespoons of white vinegar poured into a crust and baked until it set into a silky custard. The vinegar gave it a brightness that tasted almost like lemon, and in the 1960s, lemons were expensive and hard to find in the rural South, so women used what they had. Vinegar cost a few pennies, sugar was in the pantry, eggs came from the yard. This was what food historians now call a desperation pie, a dessert made from the cheapest pantry staples during times when fruit and citrus were out of reach. The name makes it sound desperate. The taste does not. Think about what it takes to look at a bottle of vinegar and see a pie inside it. That is not desperation. That is a mind that refuses to accept that sweetness is only for people who can afford lemons. These women did not have cookbooks telling them to substitute vinegar for citrus. They figured it out by standing in their kitchens and asking themselves what they had and what it could become. Vinegar pie, water pie, chess pie, buttermilk pie. Every one of them was an answer to the same question. What can I make from almost nothing that still tastes like love? The food industry cannot commercialize that question. No factory can bottle it. That is why these pies are disappearing. Not because they taste bad, because the women who asked that question are no longer standing in those kitchens. Number 12, cracklings. These were not the same as pork rinds, and that difference mattered. A crackling was the skin of the hog with the fat still attached, fried until the outside shattered and the inside stayed rich and chewy. Pork rinds were just the skin, puffed up like a chip. A woman in Opelousas, Louisiana, fried her cracklings in a cast iron Dutch oven the morning after hog killing day and laid them out on brown paper to drain. In 1967, a pound of fresh cracklings at the butcher counter cost about 20 cents. You ate them plain, standing in the yard, or you crumbled them into cornbread batter for crackling bread. The difference between a crackling and a pork rind is the difference between a memory and a photograph of a memory. One has depth, the other is flat. The bagged pork rinds survived. The fresh cracklings did not. Number 11, molasses popcorn balls. A woman in Jackson, Mississippi made these every October for the children on her street from 1954 until 1978. She popped corn in a heavy pot on the stove, boiled molasses with a little butter and vinegar until it reached the soft ball stage, poured it over the popcorn, and shaped the mixture into balls with her bare hands while it was still warm enough to stick but cool enough not to burn. She greased her palms with butter first. She made between 40 and 60 of them every Halloween and wrapped each one in wax paper twisted at both ends. In those days, homemade treats were what children expected. The popcorn balls were sweet, salty, and sticky in a way that no store-bought candy could match. By the late 1970s, Fear of tampered candy ended the tradition of homemade Halloween treats in most neighborhoods, and the popcorn balls disappeared with it. The recipe was not lost, the trust was. Number 10, butter beans and cornbread crumble. This was a snack and a meal depending on how much you put in the bowl. A woman in Demopolis, Alabama, took leftover butter beans, mashed them slightly with a fork, spooned them into a bowl, and crumbled cornbread over the top. Then she poured the potlikker from the greens over everything and handed it to you warm. Potlikker is the broth left behind after you cook greens, and in Black Southern kitchens, throwing it away was something close to a sin. It was full of vitamins and flavor from the collards, the ham hock, the garlic, and the vinegar. That potlikker turned a bowl of beans and bread into something your body recognized as medicine. The crumble soaked it up like a sponge. By the time convenience foods filled the pantry, nobody was saving potlikker anymore. And without the potlikker, the snack did not work. Number 9, sugar-boiled custard. This was not pudding and it was not ice cream, though it lived somewhere between the two. A woman in Durham, North Carolina, stood at her stove stirring a pot of milk, egg yolks, sugar, and vanilla over low heat until it thickened into a pourable custard, the color of pale butter. She never stopped stirring, not once. If you stopped stirring, the eggs would scramble and you would have to start over. She served it warm in a teacup on Christmas Eve, and her family drank it the way you would drink cocoa, slowly, standing near the fireplace. Boiled custard was a staple of Black Southern holiday traditions from the late 1800s through the 1960s, and the skill it required was the reason not everyone could make it. 3 generations watched her stir that pot, and not one of them could replicate the exact consistency. She said the custard would tell you when it was done by the way it coated the back of the spoon. Her hand knew the thickness. Nobody else could feel it. Number 8, hot water cornbread. This was the simplest bread in the entire soul food tradition, and it might have been the most important. A woman in Yazoo City, Mississippi, mixed self-rising cornmeal with a pinch of salt and enough boiling water to make a dough she could shape with her hands. She formed patties the width of her palm, dropped them into a skillet of hot oil, and fried them until they turned dark gold on both sides. No eggs, no milk, no butter, nothing but cornmeal, salt, and water from a kettle. The recipe traces back to the flatbreads of West Africa, where millet and sorghum was shaped and cooked without utensils. Enslaved Africans adapted the technique using cornmeal because that was what their enslavers provided. The boiling water was the key. It softened the cornmeal enough to hold its shape without crumbling. Some women added a tiny bit of sugar, others did not. The variations were as individual as handwriting. That was the whole recipe. Number 7, Blackberry dumplings. In the 1960s, if you lived in the rural South, blackberries grew wild along every fence line, ditch bank, and wood edge from June through July. They were free. All you needed was a bucket and long sleeves to protect your arms from the thorns. A woman near Meridian, Mississippi, picked 2 quarts of blackberries. Before 7 in the morning, brought them home, simmered them with sugar and water until the juice ran dark purple, then dropped spoonfuls of dumpling batter into the bubbling fruit and covered the pot. The dumplings steamed inside that blackberry syrup until they were pillowy and stained violet all the way through. This was a one-pot dessert that could feed a family for the cost of a cup of flour and a cup of sugar. The berries were free from the land. Black families relied on foraging like this for generations, turning what grew wild into something that tasted deliberate. When families moved from the country to the city, the fence lines and the berries stayed behind. The dumplings went with them. Number 6, fried okra chips. Before frozen breaded okra showed up in grocery bags, there was this. A woman in Montgomery, Alabama, sliced fresh okra into thin rounds, tossed them in cornmeal seasoned with salt, pepper, and a pinch of cayenne, and fried them in a shallow pool of oil until they turned into crunchy chips you could eat by the handful. In the 1960s, okra was one of the most common vegetables in any black southern garden because it grew well in heat and poor soil, both of which the South had in abundance. Okra has deep roots in West Africa, where it was used in stews and soups for centuries before it crossed the Atlantic. The fried version was a porch snack, something you ate standing up while waiting for supper to finish. A woman in her garden could pick the okra, slice it, fry it, and have it on a plate in less than 20 minutes. That speed was the recipe. That garden was the store. Number 5, peanut butter bread. This was a one-bowl bread that required no butter, no eggs, and no milk if you did not have any. A woman in Tuskegee, Alabama, made hers with flour, sugar, baking powder, salt, peanut butter, and just enough water or milk to form a thick batter. She poured it into a greased loaf pan and baked it until the top cracked and the kitchen smelled like roasted peanuts. Peanuts became a major Southern crop after the Civil War, and at the Tuskegee Institute, George Washington Carver helped popularize them as an affordable, soil-restoring crop with hundreds of practical uses. In Black Southern kitchens, that knowledge turned peanuts into bread, cookies, candy, and survival baking. During the Depression and World War II rationing, peanut butter replaced butter, eggs, and milk in recipes across the South. This bread was the proof. You did not need a dairy cow, you did not need a hen house, you needed a jar of peanut butter and an oven. That was enough. Number 4, banana croquettes. This is the snack most people have never heard of, and the silence around it tells you something about how much has been lost. A woman in Savannah, Georgia, mashed ripe bananas, rolled the mixture into small logs, dredged them in flour and breadcrumbs, and fried them in hot oil until the outside turned crispy and the inside stayed soft and sweet. Some women added a dusting of powdered sugar. Others drizzled them with molasses. Banana croquettes appeared in early 20th century black cookbooks and church recipe collections, and by the 1960s, they were still being made in some kitchens as an afternoon treat for children. The recipe required almost nothing. Bananas were cheap. Flour was in the pantry. Oil was on the stove. But the technique, the exact softness of the banana, the precise temperature of the oil, the timing that kept the crust from burning before the inside warmed through, that knowledge lived in the hands of the women who made them. And when those women were gone, the croquettes were gone too. Number 3, Chow on crackers. Chow was a spicy, tangy relish made from green tomatoes, cabbage, onions, peppers, vinegar, sugar, and salt. A woman in rural Virginia put up several batches every summer, filling mason jars that lined her pantry shelves like stained glass. The green tomatoes came from the garden at the end of the season, the ones that would not ripen before the first frost. She chopped everything by hand, boiled it with the vinegar and spices, and sealed the jars while they were still hot. You ate chow on crackers as a snack, spooned it over black-eyed peas, or set it on the table as a condiment that went with everything. In the 1960s, a jar of homemade chow was something you gave to neighbors, brought to church suppers, and traded like currency. It cost almost nothing to make because the ingredients were either grown in the yard or heading for the compost pile. That was the genius. It turned what was about to be wasted into something that lasted all winter. Number 2, chess pie squares. A regular chess pie was a whole pie baked in a crust, rich enough to stop you in your tracks. But the squares were the portable version, cut from a sheet pan, cooled on the counter, and wrapped in wax paper for carrying. A woman in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, made a batch every Friday afternoon for her church bake sale from 1959 to 1973. Her filling was sugar, butter, eggs, cornmeal, a tablespoon of vinegar, and a pour of vanilla. She spread it over a shortbread crust in a baking pan and cooked it until the top crackled like a sugar shell. Chess pie is one of the oldest desserts in Southern cooking, with roots tracing back to English cheese tarts that traveled to America with colonial settlers and were adapted by Black cooks who replaced expensive ingredients with pantry staples. The cornmeal rose to the top during baking and formed a crust that was sweet, golden, and impossible to replicate from a box. Each square was about 2 inches wide. 2 of them were a meal. One of them was a promise that something sweet still existed in a world that was not always kind. Number 1, red drink and a pickle on a stick. This was it. This was the snack that defined a generation of Black childhoods in the 1960s South, and it came from a kitchen, not a store. A woman in Greenville, Mississippi, sold dill, pickles impaled on peppermint sticks out of her kitchen window for a nickel. You held the peppermint stick like a handle and bit into the pickle, and the combination of sour, salty, and sweet hit your tongue all at once. She served it with a cup of cherry Kool-Aid, so red it stained the cup. The tradition of red drinks runs deep in Black culture. Food historian Adrian Miller has called the red drink the official beverage of soul food, noting its roots in West African hibiscus, teas, and cola nut drinks that carried a distinct crimson color. The red was not just a flavor, it was a connection to something older than anyone at the table could name. In the Mississippi Delta, the combination of pickle and red drink evolved into Kool-Aid pickles, where dill pickles were soaked in cherry Kool-Aid brine until they turned scarlet and tasted like something between candy and vinegar. That combination was sold at gas stations, school fundraisers, and house stores across the Delta for decades. It is still alive in some corners of Mississippi. But the original version, the pickle on a peppermint stick, served through a kitchen window by a woman who knew every child on the block by name, that version is almost gone. The window closed. The screen door does not open anymore. The nickel does not buy anything. But if you grew up with that taste on your tongue, you are carrying a piece of something that no factory can manufacture and no grocery store can stock. That is the truth about every snack on this list. They were not products. They were proof that the women who made them could turn 5 cents worth of ingredients into something that tasted like belonging.
Buttermilk cornbread sticks brought the smell of hot iron and sweet corn to countless African-American kitchens, where cast iron molds shaped each piece into crisp-edged fingers perfect for dipping. The batter of stone-ground cornmeal, tangy buttermilk, and a little lard was poured into sizzling molds so the edges crackled as soon as they touched the heat. Children loved pulling the golden sticks apart, steam rising as they slathered honey butter across the ridges. They were the ideal companion to collard greens or a simple bowl of beans, hearty enough to stand alone as a snack when money was scarce. Street vendors sold them wrapped in newspaper at church homecomings, and neighbors traded secrets about which cornmeal gave the best crunch. The sound of batter meeting hot iron became a music of its own, echoing through small kitchens on quiet evenings. Today, these molds often sit forgotten in cupboards, but a warm cornbread stick still delivers a taste of the past that is both humble and magnificent.
Long before snacks came in plastic wrappers, they came from the same pot that fed the family. Crackling bread was born on hog killing day when families rendered lard from pork fat, and the crispy bits left behind, cracklings, were folded straight into cornbread batter. The cracklings gave the bread a crunch plain cornbread never had, little pockets of salt and pork fat that burst between your teeth. This wasn't something learned from a book. You stood next to whoever worked the stove, watching her crumble the cracklings with her fingers, judging the batter's thickness by sight. Through the 1940s and 50s, in the rural South, hog killing meant every part of the animal fed somebody, and crackling bread was how the smallest scraps ended up on the table tasting richer than anything store-bought. Kids tore off corners still warm from the cast iron, eating it plain or crumbled into potlikker. The bread kept for days, growing denser with each one.
Sweet potato tea cakes were once the pride of community bake sales and Sunday socials, a simple cookie that carried the fragrance of home in every bite. Mashed sweet potato gave the dough a gentle orange hue and natural sweetness, while molasses and warm spices like cinnamon and nutmeg filled kitchens with an autumn scent no matter the season. Grandmothers stirred the batter with wooden spoons worn smooth from years of use, passing quiet wisdom to the children who helped scoop each round onto greased pans. The cakes baked into soft, slightly chewy circles that could be eaten plain or brushed with a thin sugar glaze if the family had a little extra. Churchgoers wrapped them in brown paper to sell for mission fundraisers, and travelers carried a few in coat pockets for long train rides when cafe prices were too high. Today, their memory lingers mostly in handwritten recipe cards tucked inside family Bibles. Tasting one now would be like opening a window to the warmth of a kitchen filled with laughter, hymn humming, and the sweet comfort of community spirit.
Every neighborhood had a house where somebody's mama filled Dixie cups with Kool-Aid, stuck in popsicle sticks, and sold them off the porch for a dime. Cherry was the best seller, grape ran second, tropical punch was for the bold. You mixed it stronger than the packet said, doubled the sugar, poured slow so the stick stayed centered while the cups froze overnight. By noon, kids lined up on the sidewalk with coins earned sweeping porches or returning bottles. The trick was peeling the cup without breaking the ice. Squeeze just right, let the edges give, pull the paper down in one strip. Some bit straight through, others licked slow, letting the color stain their lips purple for hours. It was a childhood economy built on sugar, ice, and 5-cent packets, and every kid on the block knew exactly which house had the coldest cups.
Tea time. Lemon chess squares carried the tang of fresh citrus into parlors where neighbors gathered for quiet afternoon visits. Based on the old-fashioned chess pie, these bars combined tart lemon juice with sugar, eggs, and a touch of cornmeal to create a dense, custardy filling. Poured over a simple shortbread crust and baked until golden, the squares were sliced neatly and dusted with a whisper of powdered sugar if it could be spared. Their bright flavor cut through the heaviness of traditional sweets, offering a refreshing note that matched the clink of teacups and the soft murmur of conversation. Hostesses prized the recipe because it kept well at room temperature and could be prepared a day ahead, making it perfect for church socials and family reunions. Children who tasted them for the first time often asked for seconds, surprised by the burst of sunshine flavor. Though rarely baked now, these squares remain a symbol of hospitality and quiet elegance, a reminder that a little lemon and patience could turn humble ingredients into something unforgettable.
Before lunch, money was a guarantee. Syrup sandwiches filled the gap between hunger and the next real meal. 2 slices of white bread, a heavy pour of Cairo syrup or dark cane syrup, pressed together and wrapped in wax paper for school. The bread went soft and sticky within minutes, part of the appeal for little hands that liked pulling it apart in sweet, doughy strings. In the 1950s, a bottle of Cairo cost less than 20 cents and stretched across a week of snacks for 3 or 4 kids. Dark syrup carried a caramel note with a faint bitterness that balanced the sweetness. Light was milder, preferred by the younger ones. No one bragged about eating syrup sandwiches. It was the kind of snack made quietly on afternoons when the icebox held nothing else. But decades later, grown men and women speak of it with something close to reverence because that sandwich meant somebody made sure you didn't go without.
Hot water. Cornbread fritters were the quick answer to hunger when a hearty snack was needed before supper or after school. Cooks stirred boiling water into seasoned cornmeal, forming a thick dough that could be shaped into small patties with a spoon. Dropped into a skillet of hot bacon drippings, the fritters sizzled and browned within minutes, filling the room with a toasty aroma that made waiting difficult. The crust formed a crisp shell while the inside stayed tender and warm. Children often burned their fingers snatching them from the pan before they cooled, eager to taste the smoky corn flavor. These fritters paired perfectly with a drizzle of cane syrup or a slice of fresh tomato when gardens were plentiful. They proved that simple ingredients and a hot stove could create pure comfort faster than any fancy recipe. Today, the memory of that first crunchy bite still lives wherever people remember the sound of cornmeal meeting hot iron.
Cinnamon sugar toast was the first snack most black kids learned to make alone, standing on a chair to reach the counter. The bread had to be white and soft enough to hold the butter without tearing. You spread it thick all the way to the edges because bare corners were unacceptable. Then came the cinnamon and sugar from a jar that lived next to the stove, the ratio known only to whoever filled it. The toast went under the broiler, never in a toaster, and you watched through the oven door until the sugar bubbled and the edges turned dark gold. You ate it standing up, burning your fingers, licking the grit off your thumb. It cost pennies, took 3 minutes, and the smell alone could pull every kid in the house out of hiding. Nobody sells it, nobody orders it, but that smell takes you straight back to a kitchen where the oven was always warm. Frozen Kool-Aid cups turned a 5-cent packet of drink mix into a summer business that kept entire blocks buzzing.
Peanut brittle with sorghum was the kind of candy that snapped between your teeth and stuck in your memory long after the last piece was gone. Farm families boiled sorghum syrup until it bubbled thick and dark, its grassy sweetness richer than plain sugar. Roasted peanuts were stirred in quickly, the hot mixture poured across buttered pans and spread thin with the back of a spoon. Children waited wide-eyed as the candy cooled, eager to crack off shiny amber shards that caught the light like stained glass. Revival gatherings and county fairs always had a table piled high with these sweet, brittle sheets, often wrapped in wax paper tied with string. The sorghum not only gave a deeper flavor, but also reflected the ingenuity of cooks who relied on what they could grow rather than expensive refined sugar. Each bite carried the flavor of late summer fields and long evenings under oil lamps. To taste it again would be to remember the easy companionship of neighbors sharing stories while the brittle snapped between happy hands.
Peanut butter and jelly on saltine crackers was what happened when the bread ran out, but hunger didn't. You spread peanut butter on one cracker, grape jelly on the other, pressed them together, and hoped it held. It rarely did. The saltine snapped under the weight, and you'd eat the whole thing in pieces, licking your fingers between bites. But the salt cut through the sweet jelly in a way soft bread never managed. In the 1960s, a box of saltines cost 15 cents and peanut butter ran about a quarter, making this one of the cheapest protein snacks a mother could stock. Kids ate these after school, before dinner, and sometimes instead of dinner when weeks ran long. Crackers stayed crisp for weeks. Peanut butter didn't need the icebox, and the jelly lasted until the jar was scraped clean with a spoon. Here's my challenge. Make one of these snacks this week. Just one. The molasses candy, the hot water cornbread, the Teacakes. Then sit down at the table, not the couch. Set a place, eat it slow. Because these snacks were never just about filling up between meals, they were about hands that knew what to do with almost nothing and turned it into something you would remember for the rest of your life. There is a woman somewhere in your family tree who wrapped candy in wax paper, who fried hand pies in a skillet that had no handle, who knew the exact color of oil that meant it was ready. That knowledge does not have to disappear with her. You can be the one who asks, before it is too late, who stands in the kitchen long enough to understand the feel of things. Now, I am not a doctor or a dietitian. This is not medical advice. Tell me in the comments which snack was made in your family kitchen. I want to know if the molasses candy gets more love than the hot water cornbread. I want to know if anyone else had a woman in their kitchen who measured sugar by counting to 3. Because these are not just snacks. They are proof that the most important recipes were never written down, only carried in hands that knew things no cookbook could teach.